Hey, I'm just going to try to figure out why. I don't know why Photo Booth didn't work today at worship, but it is a third party app that you use, so obviously I can't call Apple about it. And I'm just trying to see, and I don't know what could have happened that it didn't work, so I'm going to just play with it for a while and see if it stays on for longer than 10 minutes or whatever. I just can't figure it out. Sweetie went, I have Sweetie and I have Sweet Pie. Sweetie went to the market, and my Sweet Pie is hiding somewhere. I don't know where she's at. It's what she does best. Cats are cats. They're very fickle. They do whatever they want, and they come around whenever they want. It's so true. As a matter of fact, it looks like it's going to storm outside. I don't know what's going on here in Michigan, but um, it's getting windy here in New Baltimore all of a sudden, and it's definitely going to be a cooling off period, which I'm ready for. I can't say anything else, but I'm really tired of the hot, hot, hot weather. I could never. I'm sorry, I could never live in Florida. I just couldn't take it. I probably would be a good candidate for any place that's more cold all the time than warm, because I figure you could always put more stuff on, but you can only take so much off. And today at worship, it was really good because we had more than usual, and it looked and smelled very nice and clean inside our worship space today because uh, people came yesterday to clean up, and one of the gals that came was insistent. Can you believe this? Somebody was actually insistent on doing the windows. Oh, nobody ever wants to do windows. And one other time on a Wednesday when I'm usually there, she came and did a couple of the windows in the basement. I don't think the windows in the basement have been done for like forever, probably since they were installed. I don't know. But the stained glass windows on the parking lot side of the building were especially brighter today. They looked really great. I'm, I'm so thankful for the people who like to do windows. I'm so very much thankful for all the people who come and show up on a regular basis, whether it's for cleaning, whether it's for worship, whatever it's for. And church council, now that we meet right after church, seems to work well because we have worship early enough, and then everybody's out and on their way almost by noon or a little bit after noon. With everybody doesn't have to make a separate trip back to the building. That is good, and everybody's looking forward to good old days. We had our church council meeting, and the chairperson came with a report that was better than anyone would have ever expected, so much is being donated. We are really looking forward to good old days. With Labor Day being early, the first of the month this year, it's going to make a difference for the whole month of September because then we have good old days. And then the following week at our church on the 14th, we will be having worship outside in the backyard there, and followed by a picnic for anybody who wants to participate. It should be fun. It'll be just a get together. And I almost wish we never quit doing the outside worship in the summertime because we really liked it. It was, even though it was during COVID, um, and at the time, well, it was just a boombox that we used, uh, even though Price could have brought his portable, his piano that he has, but it was too much to ask for. But so this month in September, when we do it, we're going to be just having the worship out back with the boombox as we did then, and it's just chummy. And we do make sure that some chairs are on the cement, so there's, it's secure as far as people who are sitting and don't want to sit on lawn chairs, because we know that lawn chairs, when you're sitting on them in the grass, sometimes one end goes down, the other end stays up. You don't want to have any lopsidedness. And as I was thinking back on church in the backyard, church in God's backyard, it was so much fun. The people that came, I just remember, well, there were so many. Charlene came with her brother a couple times. Of course, they've gone on to eternity, but the other people that came, everybody, after worship, everybody kind of stayed around and we just hung out together, and it was friendly, just friendly get together. It was good. So I'm looking forward to it in September when we have it outside again. I just pray for a nice day, and we will just have, everybody brings a dish to pass, and we'll just go with what we have and enjoy one another's company. For anybody who's interested, just come along. If you don't want to come to worship first, that's fine too. Just come bring a dish to pass and hang out for the afternoon. I don't know if anybody's going to bring the corn toss. I don't know if anybody has it. We'll see. Things have a way of working out. So I'm just giving a shout out here, trying to figure out why Photo Booth didn't work. So far, it is still recording. So I don't know why it didn't record in worship, except I guess it's possible the button didn't get hit hard enough. Today we had Michael in church, and Michael did the call to worship, which was perfect. Michael is chairing the good old days, and I just can't believe how between him and Veronica's daughters, they've kind of got everything pulled together. The Northern family, they have everything pulled together for the parking, and we will be selling, pop and water, and it's all taken care of. So any volunteers that still want to step up, of course, you're always welcome. We always need more help, and we need help too because, it's a special year. Sue and Rich are the people that are the grand marshals of the parade this year. And Rich, of course, is so busy all the time helping us out. He's just an angel. He is one of our, secret angels that's in the background doing all kinds of things all the time. We so appreciate him and Dave, and then the ones who are on the rotation for cutting the grass. Sometimes they're people we don't see regularly, but, they're there, they do their part. Everybody does something. We have some people who only want to help out when we're helping with McRest somewhere. We have others who want to help out only with the Christmas Day dinner. We have those who want to volunteer for Euchre on the second Saturday of the month all the time. We are very fortunate, even though everyone doesn't come all the time for Sunday worship. I do try to get it so that it records. Like I said, I don't know why it didn't record today, so that's what this is a practice to see what's going on. And Mark was at our council meeting, which we were kind of surprised because we know he's expecting a first grandchild and thought maybe he would be on his way to Oklahoma already. His daughter is expecting anytime, so anytime he's going to be him and Vicky are going to be on the road going to see that new grandson. So life goes on, and we know that God is still speaking. We don't know what you hear God speaking, but we hope you listen and ponder, because we know that the heroes of faith, all of those who were the people who went before us, I don't think they were all like hunky-dory, this is all great, God's taken us on a nice big 40-year trek through the desert, or we're going to go march around the walls here and Jericho is going to be ours. I don't think they always felt like, oh God, you've got it all under control. We really trust you 100%. I think they had doubts and they had fears and they had questions. And I'm thinking sometimes they were very deliberate in how they approached God. I think they probably had times when they were like, okay, whatever do you want from us, God? We've had enough of this. All this trekking around the whole desert. And when do we get to go to our land full of milk and honey? They're their ancestors of faith. And now, we who gather on a regular basis, we are the ancestors of faith to that next generation that is coming up. We need to step up how we are good ancestors of the faith. Sometimes we have a generational block as far as which generation participates in worship, and is there a following generation that does not have anything to do with it. And I just wonder sometimes when people really have difficulty in their life, what are they going to turn to when they've really not been exposed thoroughly to God? How are they going to get through difficult times? We look at our world today. Some people think it's great. Some people think it's awful. We remember Virginia Woolf. She was one of the people that, she wrote lots of novels. And of course, her husband was also a novelist. I like, attracts like. There's a story. There's a story about her when she was listening. It was radio time. It was before World War II. And she was pounding on the window, saying, hey, come on in. I want you to hear this. Hitler's on again. And he just stood up by the garden where he was planting under an apple tree. He was planting iris plants. And he just stood up and looked at the window and he said to her, "You know what, Virginia? I'm not coming in. I don't want to hear what that man has to say. And you know what? These irises that I'm planting, they're going to be here long after him. He's going to be dead and gone, and my flowers are going to still be growing." Talk about faith. And sure enough, 20 years after he planted those irises, they were still kicking out blooms and flowers. And of course, it was 20 years after Hitler had committed suicide. So sometimes, we have a faith and we have a hope, and we know that we're not always sure if we're going to see what we're praying about. But we are the ancestors to the next generation. We are the ones who have to set the pace for them, however their world's going to look when they go forward. And by the way, we've been reading out of Hebrews. Hebrews is that wonderful text. We don't know if it was meant to be just a one text or a one-time talking to the people that were the Hebrew, to the Hebrews. If Paul went and it's really suspected that the entire book of Hebrews was presented in one sitting when he went to the Hebrew people and he spoke to them. One sitting. And we've been reading in Hebrews for a couple weeks now, and it's a great summertime read. It's a great message. And if it is true that some of Paul's writings over the time actually were edited by some really good intentioned people that made him look a little bit like a curmudgeon that you wouldn't want to be around. Okay, ladies, keep your mouth shut, keep something on your head, show that you are subservient to what, males or to God? It is assumed that some of the translations, the more the translations came to be, the more some of the writings got changed and made Paul more of a kind of person you didn't want to know than a person you did want to know. And I think he gets the bad rap sometimes, that he really had faith in the women in his community. He just basically knew what kind of community it was. He was saying, you know what, if you're going to open your mouth, if you're going to say something, make sure you're prepared. Don't expect people to listen unless you are prepared. And don't embarrass yourself, is what he was saying. Because it was a tough time. The women didn't have a place in the society. They were supposed to just follow whatever the male generation, what they wanted. And then when you did have people like Priscilla and some of the early leaders of the church, Phoebe, it's even suspected that maybe Phoebe wrote one of the books that's attributed to Paul. And I just wonder how, when the scriptures were written, we know the stories of what went on up until that first century when the canon of the scripture, the books that were approved for the Bible were approved. Do you really think God quit talking at that time? I don't think so. I think God is still speaking. God is still wanting us to pay attention to the scriptures and not just take them literally, but to look deep into the scriptures as to what's the next level. What else am I supposed to hear in this story? In the reading today, Jesus is pretty angry. He said, I'd like to call fire down on everybody and everything. He's having a human day. Jesus had human days. And he's basically saying, I've been here for all these years. I'm on my way to Jerusalem. I'm going there to die. You people just don't get the message. You don't want to hear it because it's a negative thing. So therefore we want nicey, nicey, nice all the time. Well, life isn't nicey, nicey, nice all the time. Sometimes we're going to have bad, and we need to know how to cope with the bad. I think maybe in today's way of dealing with children all the time, they never have time to just be kids. A pickup game down at the park without an adult supervision, Oh, there's so-and-so. And I was just talking to a young lady who's getting ready for Powder Puff. Powder Puff is, one thing that a lot of the high school girls especially look forward to in their senior year, to play Powder Puff. And it sounded like, it's supposed to be flag football. Well, it sounded more like whoever the coaches are at her school anyhow, They think they're coaching a bunch of men, for one thing, a bunch of guys, because it's flag football. You're not supposed to be touching anybody. You're certainly not supposed to be picking and pulling at the hair of somebody else that you're playing ball with. Sometimes win, win, win at all cost is what's promoted by good intentioned coaches that go overboard. I mean, I would hope there's an athletic director at her school who's paying attention to volunteer coaches, what they actually do. You know, you have to be aware of what's going on with not just the sport maybe that you like, but all of the sports that you are athletic director over. Got to pay attention to all of them. And I'm thinking of Paul and the whole reading that we've had from Hebrews for several weeks now. And I'm hoping that each and every one of us will sit down and just read through the book of Hebrews in one setting out loud, so you hear the whole of that book. And when we pay attention to the whole of that book, and along with the gospel tradition, we read the gospels again out loud. You need to hear where you're putting the emphasis, not just where whoever else is in church putting the emphasis, but where you're going to actually put the emphasis, and do some meditation on where it's hurting you or strengthening you or confronting you in some way, or is it actually offering comfort? You know, we confront the comfortable and comfort those who are in misery. That's really the gospel message. We reach out to those who really need being reached out to the most. We try to do our best to be available to those who give a jingle and say, can you come? And you go. It doesn't have to be scheduled all the time. A phone call, just as quick. And recognizing that people really need to feel that they can call. I mean, my cell phone's on, except I turn it off. Yes, I do turn it off at 8:30 at night, but I'm always willing, you know, at 8:30, 9:30, I'm sorry, it's 9:30 at night, I turn it off. I figure after 9:30, nobody's going to, there's not much I could do at that time of night anyhow. But my house phone will always be ringing. So if somebody really wants to call, my cell phone might be off, but the house phone is going to ring. So if somebody happens to have an accident and they're in trouble, they're in emergency, I will hear my house phone and I will go. Because that's just what pastors do. You know, you open your heart to the people who are in need at the time. And it's not that you just are there for the people who regularly worship. You are there for anybody who calls. And, you know, sometimes we're even there for people who call because they don't have a church. You know, sometimes there's families. Well, there was a family recently because of a car accident. They didn't know any ministers. You know, so that's happening now because of the way we think we can do it all ourselves. We think we can do everything all of the time. And, you know, quite frankly, God didn't make us to be 24/7 people. God made us to be people who rest once in a while and recognize that sometimes you just shut down once in a while. And sometimes when you're shutting down, maybe, just maybe, you know, in United Church of Christ, God is still speaking. We say that all the time. And, you know, there's the story about it, of where that came from. Gracie Allen and George Burns had a radio show first, and then I guess TV, because I was able to find some YouTubes to go back on and listen. Now, that Gracie was quite a gal. She had these one-liners that they were funny, and as you were laughing at them, you were, oh my gosh, what else does she say there? Her one-liners were great. It was so different than what we call comedy today. I mean, yeah, the late night monologues are funny, but most of the time they're making fun of people. And her slapstick kind of comedy and her one-liners, oh my gosh, they were just super. And, you know, that whole thing of don't put a period where God has put a comma, that was what she wrote in 1964 to George Burns, her husband. She took out paper and pencil and wrote a note to him because for years she had suffered with a heart condition and she knew she was going to be dying pretty soon. And she wanted him to understand that her death was but a comma for him. It didn't mean that he was to quit living. It was a comma, and you pay attention to what's coming next. A period says, end, done, no more to be said. That's not what God does with us. That's not what God did with the heroes of our faith. In spite of all of their tribulations and trials, and I'm sure their doubts and their concerns as to, whatever are you doing for us, God? We've had enough of this. We don't understand why we're in the desert. We don't understand why we're marching around this wall in hopes that the walls are going to fall. We don't understand any more than we understand everything here today, because we don't. And you know what? God is still speaking. We got to be listening. What is God saying to you? When you stay and just sit in the presence of God, if you can ever, and especially for our young people, just sitting in the presence to just be, rather than everything being scheduled. You know, every minute of the day is scheduled with a coach, a teacher, whatever. You know, we need downtime. All of us. We need the downtime. And now, just for your information, I was only doing this because I don't know why photo booth did not work today at church, but I'm already into 21 minutes and it's still playing. I'm going to send it to you anyhow, because my sermon today did not end up being anything like it was going to be. And we ended up doing not just one reading, but two, because the lay reader decided to do two readings. So things, you know, sometimes on the spot, you just change what you're doing. You don't go with what was planned, because sometimes what was planned maybe wasn't meant to be, because things got changed. And so we prayed today for people. One of the men that we've been praying for some time died on Friday night. And we were praying for, well, so many people that have addiction problems. And their prayer and our prayer for them has to be, God, will you please take away the desire for that substance? And it's kind of like the prayer that needed to be said way back in Augustine's time. Remember, he was the one who said, oh God, I want to be healed, but not yet. I think that's the problem with a lot of people with addiction problems. Yeah, they want to be healed temporarily maybe, but you know, I still want to have a desire for alcohol. I still want to have a desire to smoke. What am I supposed to do instead of? How about reading a book? How about reaching out to other people? How about recognizing that you could be a really good friend to somebody else who has the same kind of problem, and you could share with how you beat it? It just takes time. It takes effort. And so in our prayers, you know, we also prayed for Rosalie Leroy, who turned 93 this week, and today's a memorial for her grandson, age 50, who died suddenly. It's just a horrible experience when you have somebody young die. And so we prayed for people with problems. We prayed for the people who are in elected offices, whether it's national offices, government in the cities, in the states. Every elected official has to be responding to the constituents that they serve. They have to pay attention to who they serve, along with, number one is God. You know, can't be having hearts of stone and trying to serve God's people, especially the people who need help. We need to be fully aware of who those people are. We can't be turning our backs to people that are in need. We can't be turning our backs to the kids that come to school and haven't eaten. How are they going to learn? How about when I look at the church that I serve in, and if we had an active shooter, we've not had the police department come in and do a what would you do during this time. But I know that sometimes in churches you're just sitting ducks because you're in a place that has nothing but steps all around the place. And if you have an elder group of people who worship on a regular basis, other than sit down or lay down in the pew, what's the protection? It's a different world, all right. It's changing, but is the change all good? Maybe we need to give consideration to, is the change good? Is all change that happens necessary? How can we change for the better? Each and every one of those are important, and each and every one of us needs to hang tight with the faith that was passed on to you, because somewhere along the line, either it was a neighbor person or it was a grandparent, somebody somewhere had the habit of prayer, had the habit of going to church, had the habit of touching base with people they were connected to on a regular basis. Somehow you learn that. We all know, internet is wonderful in some aspects, but the people on internet, they're not your real friends. No, they're just on the screen. What a difference it makes even after you've met people on the screen. I know this from Zooms. When you finally meet people in person, it makes a big difference to sit down and talk with them other than them being just up there on the platform of who the people are that are on screen. Oh, and I was enlightened this week. I went to the Committee on Ministry national meeting. Very enlightening, very enlightening. The National UCC has some wonderful materials out there that we should be accessing on a regular basis. And our Michigan conference also has some wonderful things that are available. There's always the first Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month, the third Wednesday of the month. Those things, if you can't go at the time that they're offered at noon on those days, you can check in anytime. Just go to the website and you will find it and you will be able to listen. You won't hear all of the conversation. You won't have the chat. I think sometimes on Zooms, the chat is really informative. But it's also true of the national meetings that you can just go on and check out whatever the meetings were, listen to them, because, the national offers a lot. There's a lot of information to be gained. And of course, the big thing now with already, from a Zoom meeting that already took place, hey, you can go soak in your bathtub and turn into a prune, just getting wrinkles from sitting in the water so long. But you could actually have your computer there and you could be listening to a Zoom meeting while you're just relaxing. Just having a relaxing time. And you're listening to something other than, the cable news right now. I don't know which one you listen to. I only listen to British broadcasting because I'm kind of fed up with American news. It's always slanted one way or the other. I really enjoy having where they present actually the left and the right, the way people are thinking. BBC News, that's where I go, and that's the only one. So I've just been rambling on here to see how this is working, and it seems to be still working. So, hey, I'm hoping you have a great Sunday afternoon, and the wind is getting windier right now as I'm looking out the windows, and I don't know if any kind of storms are predicted, but I think it's time for me to catch up on some long-distance phone calls. Got to talk to my sister, Jack's brother, and our son down in Florida, see what's happening. So you have yourself a great Sunday. Enjoy the day, enjoy the week ahead, and just keep looking forward to good old days because it's going to be a great experience this year in Richmond. Rich and Sue are going to be the Grand Marshals. That's really great. I'm so happy for them that I wondered how soon it was going to happen. I wish Yvonne Rendell was still around because every time I saw her before she died, she kept saying, I don't know why Rich Weiner is not in the parade one of these times. Why is he not the master of ceremonies? And here it is this year, it's happening. So she's going to have to be watching from eternal life. So again, bye. Take care.